Summer may be winding down, but whoa, things are really heating up in Washington. A number of political crises are approaching in September, but really it all boils down to one thing: another potential government shutdown.
Republicans have to do something we haven't done in a long time. Stand up and win the argument. We have to stand up and say, no, we want to keep the government open. We have voted to keep the government open, to fund the government. Why is President Obama threatening to shut the government down, to force Obamacare down the throats of the American people?
Or are you, Ted? Let's bring in our political insiders. John LeBoutillier, former Republican congressman for New York. I got a laugh out of him. Doug Schoen, Fox News contributor, former pollster for Bill Clinton. Pat Caddell, also a Fox News contributor, former pollster for President Jimmy Carter. Coming up today from Charleston, South Carolina. Pat, good to see you. Doug, let me start with you. It's the dream, isn't it? The dream of Democrats is that the GOP shuts down the government.
It absolutely is. And Ted Cruz is trying to make the case, as Newt Gingrich did back in the mid-90s, that the president will be blamed if the government is shut down. In fact, the opposite will be the case, Gregg. The Republicans will be blamed. The Republicans are on target to hold the House and potentially win the Senate. But based on my experience in the White House with Bill Clinton, the opposite will happen. It's the only potential game changer the Democrats have to potentially win the House if there's a shutdown.
And John, give me your line.
Well, up till now, the three of us have called the Republican Party the stupid party. If they do this one, they have gone from being the stupid party to being the suicide party. And what Doug said is true. We will lose the House. We will not regain the Senate, or we have a chance next year to win control of the Senate. And it's not that we're not, and Ted Cruz wants to stop Obamacare. Right. Great. What we've talked about every week here with you is how to stop it.
Right.
Okay? And there are ways to do it. Delaying it is the smart political move. Everything the Republicans have done, defunding, now they want to close the government down to stop funding it, repealing it, that'll never happen. Delaying it can be done politically.
All right. Pat, it strikes me that Obamacare is unraveling all on its own. So, Republicans, wouldn't they be smart to just sit on their hands?
No. I think what John just said, first of all, both Doug and John are right. This is a non-starter eventually. But if you see it as an opening bid, and remember that Ted Cruz is the person 9 months ago, when he got no traction, but he introduced it. He was the first person talking about delay. If you go to delay, and if you add in the issue, which I think is a potential firestorm issue that no Republican will use, which is the IRS running health care, but particularly this deal where they decide they would get their subsidies. We talked about this before. And I'm telling you, there ain't going to be a deal. This is about politics. And the real issue for the Republicans is to make the Democrats in the Senate who are up for re-election and in the House vote on things they cannot swallow. Or if they do, they will be the suicide party. That is the key here. Can they be smart as well as tough? John Boehner's solution of just surrendering doesn't work, by the way.
Well, smart is really hard for them.
Yeah. Here's the situation. John Boehner is now talking, Gregg, about a continuing resolution of a short-term nature to delay the process till later in the year, early next year, when the debt ceiling and the government funding issue can be joined. My attitude is that if they do that, they will just up the ante. Obama will say it's all on the Republicans, and ultimately it'll make a bad situation worse for the GOP.
Let's put on the screen the latest Rasmussen Reports poll on John Boehner. He is not, the most popular guy in the bar. John, look at that.
Well, it's the most unpopular he is measured since.
He could buy drinks for the entire bar and still be at 30, favorable.
That's right. The last time he was this low was right after the default of 2011, which the Republicans were equal partners with Obama on that one, where they couldn't make a deal. Here we are back, debt ceiling and budget deal, just what Doug said, two of them wrapped together. With Obama sitting there, and we've said this on here, Obama doesn't really care about the substance of any of this. He cares about the politics of it. If he can find a way to screw over the GOP, to cost him the House, he'd consider his second term a total success.
You know, the other thing that, and Pat, I want to get your reaction. I want to play a soundbite of Tom Coburn, who is, you know, I mean, he's a highly respected member of the U.S. Senate. And he's talking about impeachment, which always hurts Republicans. Here he is.
You have to establish the criteria that would qualify for proceedings against the president. And that's called impeachment. But that, you know, that's not something you take lightly, and you have to use a historical precedent of what that means. You know, I think there's some intended violation of law in this administration, but I also think there's a ton of incompetence of people who are making decisions.
He may be telling the truth, but it's self-destruct, isn't it?
Oh, my God. This is, let me just say, this is not only self-destructive, this is mental self-abuse by people on the right who get indulging themselves in this. This is about winning. First of all, this is a party, one of the reasons for Boehner's low ratings, I suspect, is this is a party that cannot even get an investigation that consistently works on Benghazi or on the IRS, and they're talking about having impeachment. You got to come on, give me a break. The fact is, yes, we talked about this last week. The government is lawless, but these people always want to go to the and I really respect Tom Coburn.
Yeah.
He's one of the few people in that town who fights about the waste and the corruption. But if this is wrong, shut your mouth. Get on the investigations
it's a dumb
you should
thing
be
to
on.
talk about, isn't it, Doug?
That will lead you to where it goes.
You know, it is a very dumb thing to talk about. I was advising President Clinton during the impeachment crisis in 98 and 97. I'm sorry, 98 and 99. And bottom line, the Democrats were on a downward trend until impeachment came. We changed the dialogue to progress, not partisanship, protect Social Security, and bottom line, against all odds and all historical precedent, the Democrats picked up seats in 98. It was because the Republicans overreached.
John?
I think the Speaker has a very difficult time here. He's got the right in his conference, a majority really of his conference, pushing at him to go after Obama more aggressively. And so far, Boehner just does nothing. And I think what he ought to do, we've said it on here for 6 months, and it will help him politically. He ought to name a select committee to do Benghazi that will satisfy his right flank. They'll vent through that committee for a while. It'll buy him some time to make other deals on other things.
All right. Let's put up the billboard. I want to show you guys this. 1 month of billboards advocating a Watergate-style committee going up in the, there it is, Boehner's district as September 11th anniversary approaches. Doug,
he's got 167 members of the Republican Congress have written to Boehner asking to create this committee. A majority of Republicans on all 4 investigating committees that are already investigating Benghazi, Gregg, have signed on. They want the select committee.
Well, here's what Boehner had to say about this. Take a listen.
I don't want to prolong this any more than anyone else. What I want is the truth. In addition to that, the IRS has admitted to targeting conservatives, even if the White House continues to be stuck on the word if. Now, my question isn't about who's going to resign. My question is, who's going to jail over this scandal?
Doug?
And the answer is no one's going to jail. We have now got those turned into so-called phony scandals because the president's been running out the clock. He now has gone from outrage to disbelief, saying it doesn't mean anything. And since there's not going to be a select committee, as far as I can tell, the Democrats and Obama have won the fight, and the president just blames the Republicans for all his own inadequacies.
Pat, is Doug right?
Well, no, I disagree with Doug because I'm hopeful. I'm still hopeful that John Boehner. Look, John Boehner cares about his country. The problem is it's about 4th on his list. There is the moral, the policy, and the arguments for Benghazi are overwhelming. And here's the question. If he is so concerned about being Speaker and his leadership, even they disagree with him, won't do this because he's worried about his own involvement with the other side issue about the CIA station and the moving of arms to Turkey for Syria. Let me just say this. They got 174 members, actually, or 68, whatever it is. Then the grassroots need to tell him if he can't do his job for the country, he should go.
Pat, so my question is,
they're losing the election.
If you've got, as you and John say, 170-odd members for this, a majority of the caucus, why is there inaction?
There's 2/3 of them. It's not just a majority. It's 2/3 of the Republicans.
Why no action?
Because the question is,
there's no courage. That's why. The president's red line has apparently, speaking of lack of courage, has been crossed in Syria. So what now? We're going to go through some of the options on the table. You know, the White House has been accused by the Wall Street Journal of putting Assad on double secret probation, which was the best line.
By Animal House.
Yeah, well, that was a great line. Is the president, and some have accused him of being this, a pacifist?
Well, first of all, let's take what he's done. He is, first of all, so weak and found in such contempt. If you understand the Arab mind in much of the world, the fact that this chemical attack was on the anniversary of his drawing the red line, which he then didn't enforce, tells you a lot about the contempt, whether it's Assad, the Russians, and why the entire region is blowing up. And I don't think he's a pacifist so much as he is a person. He's not an American exceptionalist. But the worst part is he doesn't believe in American. He believes in leading from behind. And his one initiative, which was to embrace the Muslim Brotherhood, has turned that region into a sinkhole disaster.
You know, during the break, you said to me he doesn't really believe in American exceptionalism.
He doesn't. He doesn't believe we are the unique nation in the world who stands for clear values of freedom and liberty. He doesn't assert them. He doesn't stand for them. He plays politics. Pat's right. He's weak. And the Middle East is asunder now because this president doesn't stand for anything clearly. I defy you or anybody else to tell me what the Obama doctrine is.
Are there any Republicans that are worth a darn?
Well, the problem, no, at the moment, no, because they're riven right down the middle. You got these neocons led by McCain and Lindsey Graham who want to run in every one of these places and bomb for no purpose to it that I can see. Yet they go over to Egypt and ask the military to let the Muslim Brotherhood people out of jail. That makes no sense. And then you have the isolationists in the Republican Party. They've gone too far that way. There has
way
to
too
be,
far, John. Way
yeah,
too
there
far.
has to be a middle ground, and the middle ground is supposed to be this. What is in our interests? That's the number one concern, not what's in Barack Obama's personal political interest, which is where he's always gone, right? We've got to be thinking, what's in America's interest in each one of these? In Egypt, it's clear. Number one priority for 35 years is to prevent Israel and Egypt from going to war with each other. Right. And we've paid them billions to not fight each other, and we have to keep doing that.
All right, here's the president's famous line about Syria. Take a listen.
We cannot have a situation where chemical or biological weapons are falling into the hands of the wrong people. We have been very clear to the Assad regime, but also to other players on the ground, that a red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized. That would change my calculus.
Pat, the trouble with drawing a line in the sand is if somebody steps over the line and you do nothing about it, you lose credibility and respect in the world. Has that happened?
Yes, absolutely. And what it does is it discredits the United States, and then it forces you, which he might do, into looking for some half a butt solution, if you will. I mean, they may bomb something or whatever. But the problem is they keep saying, we can't do it unless we have everybody on board. At some point, you have to, when you say what you mean, you have to say what you mean and mean what you say. And this president doesn't, because he is so far over his head, and he is surrounded by people who, frankly, are incompetent. What's happening in Egypt in Syria,
there's another red line
disaster.
That's been drawn for Iran. We have a new president in Iran. We are supposed to start negotiations. They'd like to negotiate, but bottom line, they are moving to develop nuclear weapons. We don't have a policy there and an approach there. We are at risk.
All right. Guys, thanks.
Thank you.
Political Insiders, thank you. You get more from them every Monday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, live on live.foxnews.com. They'll also be back Sunday.